Shalom Aleichem. Today is Yom Hamishi B'Shabbat, Thursday, Kaf Gimel B'Tevet Tavshin Peh, according to our calendar, corresponding to the 23rd of January 2025, according to the Gregorian calendar. We continue in our study in Hilchot Avoda Zarah Hilchot HaGoyim L'Rabbeinu HaGadol Rambam Zichrono Livracha, and we begin at the top of the Perek. En megalahin pa'afei harosh, כמו שהיו עושים עובדי עבודה זרה וחומריהן. We are not allowed, or it is forbidden to shave. The word legaleah means to shave, which means to remove completely, not to trim, even trim very short, but to remove altogether. And therefore, this can only be done with a razor, or with nowadays, I would say, with almost any electric shaver as well. Patei harosh refers to the hair just in front of the ear, on the head. In other words, we're not talking about the beard at this point. We're talking about the hair of the head, and we're talking about the hair which grows on the lower part of the temple, right in front of the ear. That's called patei harosh. Patei in plural because there are two, obviously. And Rambam here immediately says, "Kemo shehayu osim avodah avodah zarah v'chumorehen," as was the practice among many nations and groups who worshipped various forms of avodah zarah, and also their priests, v'chumorehen. Shene'emar lo thaqifu pa'ath roshechem. We are familiar with such hairstyles nowadays as well. In fact, it's I believe once more in fashion in different parts of the world. So, whether a person intends to do so because it is similar to the hairstyles of various avodah zarah, or for other reasons, whatever the reason, it is asur to do so. Rambam is of the opinion that this is another example of the Torah distancing us from the ways of the Goyim. As Rambam writes here, the headline, the name of these halachot, Hilchot Avodah Zarah v'Hilchot HaGoyim. These things go together. This is a hok of the Goyim. This is a kind of hairstyle which is very common amongst many Goyim. Interestingly, such a hairstyle seems not always, not exclusively, but frequently to be associated with all kinds of with all manner of radical, violent ideologies. Think Vikings, think Nazis, and other groups that may come to mind. They were all into this kind of a haircut. If there's a connection there, I'm not sure or why that is, but it seems to be the pattern, the historical pattern. Rambam adds, وَحَيَابْ عَلْ كُلْ پِئَةٍ وَفِئَةٍ. Each pe'ah in itself is asur, and if you do one and not the other, you have nevertheless transgressed the mitzvah lo ta'aseh of the Torah. לפיכך המגלח שני סדעו, a person who shaves both temples, אפילו בבת אחת, even if he does it at the same time, وَهَثْرَأَ and he was warned once by people who were aware of his intention to do so. Loka Shatayim, he is Hayav 2 Malkuyot for each Pe'ah. הלכה ב' אחד המגלח הפאות בלבד ומניח שיער כל הראש ואחד המגלח כל הראש כאחד. Obviously there are two ways that one can go about doing such a thing. One can shave all of one's head together, like a general comprehensive shaving of all the hair on the head, which would include therefore the pe'oth, or one can do only the pe'oth. It makes no difference, says Rambam. Once a person has shaved that specific area, the lower part of the temple in front of the ear, between the ears and the eyes, that is the definition of the Isur. במה דברים אמורים באיש המגלח? This is true for the person who does the shaving. So if a person goes to a barber and tells him, do such and such for me, the person doing the shaving is hayav. Aval ha'isha mitgaleach, he who is being shaved, eno loka, ela im ken siya lamigaleach, unless he helped in some way. What does that mean, to help in some way? Even tilting one's head according to the request of the barber in order to facilitate what he is doing, that is called siyua, that is called participating and aiding the event that is happening, that is going on, and it is asur. You can see the screen on the Rambam, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And he who shaves the pe'ah harosh of the katan of a minor is lokeh also. In other words, the katan is not hayav, not kuyav because of his age, but the person who does it to him is hayav. Now, what about a woman? Rambam says in Halacha Gimel or Beth, Ha'isha shegilaha pe'ath rosh ha'ish, or shenitgalaha patura, shene'emar lo takifu pe'ath roshechem, talking about the pe'ath of the hair of the head, v'lo tashhit at pe'ath zekanecha, and do not shave off your beard. Kol sheyeshno bevel tashhit, yeshno bevel takif. He who is the pasuk bundles these two things together. He who is prescribed from bal tashhith, which refers to the beard, yeshno beval takif, is also not allowed to shave that part of the head. V'isha eina beval tashhith, a woman is obviously not referred to in the pasuk of bal tashhith zekanecha, pa'at zekanecha, lefi she'en la zakan, because she has no beard. Lefichach ha'avadim ho'il v'yesh lehem zakan asurim b'hakafa. And here, in this case, an Eved Kan'ani has a different status from a woman because he does have a beard. Normally, an Eved Kan'ani has the same halachic status and the same halachot apply to an Eved Kan'ani as to a woman, to a Isha, but in this case it is not so. לפיכך העבדים הואילו יש להם זקן, אסורים בהקפה. And that's why Rambam goes on now to say in the next halacha, halacha daled or gimel, Kol mitzvot lo ta'asa sheba Torah. Any negative commandment of the Torah. Any mitzvah lo ta'aseh applies equally to men and women. Ahad anoshim, v'ahad noshim hayovim. Just as a man is not allowed to eat pork, neither is a woman allowed to eat pork. Just as a man is not allowed to all the mitzvot to do with isur melacha on certain days of the year, such as Shabbat, Yom Tov, the same applies to a woman as to a man. There is no difference. There are only 3 exceptions. Chutz mibal takif, which is what we just discussed now, the shaving of that part of the head. Uval tashchit, which refers to the beard, as we also just mentioned. Uval yitameh kohen lemethim, and the isur of a kohen, and this refers only to a male, to a kohen, who is not allowed to become tameh, not allowed to come into contact with the methim, with the dead, or to be in an oil hameth, or be in the same room, etc. V'chol misvat aseh shehi mizman lizman, whether it should be minukad with a patah or with a chamles is a question of masoreth. So the Temanim read it with a chamles mizman lizman, and most of the other Eidot Masoreth would be to say mizman lizman. Wa'ina tadira. Therefore, any miswat lo ta'as, v'chol miswat aseh, I'm sorry, a positive commandment, shehi mizaman lizman, wa'ina tadira, is not a constant, regular miswah. Nashim puturoth, women are exempt from those positive miswot. And here too there are exceptions. Hosmi kiddush hayom, which is kiddush on Shabbat, which refers to the kiddush of the evening. V'achilat masa b'leilei Pesach, the eating of masa at Leil Seder. V'achilat haPesach u'shachitato, women are chayav also b'korban Pesach as men. V'hakel, the mitzvah of hakel, of gathering to hear the Torah read in public, Sukkot after Shnat HaShemitah, V'simcha shanashim hayavot. This refers to a korban harira on Yamim Tovim, and the general mitzvah of Simchat HaRechel, because the harira is also part of the general overarching mitzvah of Simchat HaRechel. So because these halachot here to do with shaving the head and the beard are exceptional, Rambam mentioned the other mitzvot, the other examples which are also exceptional. And all of this applies to mitzvot min Torah. When it comes to mitzvot divrei soferim, it depends on what the gezerah, what the takana exactly was. As we know, with regards to kriyat or shmi'at ha-meghila on Purim, or lighting nerot Hanukkah, for example, two most obvious mitzvot min divrei soferim, women are hayavot. Which leaves us, of course, people whose gender is unclear. Therefore, the Rambam now says the next halacha, which is halacha he or daled. Tumtum vandroginos harehen sofek. Tumtum is something which nowadays a simple operation generally solves the problem. This refers to someone whose genitalia are hidden from view by some extraneous, superfluous skin, and therefore you would you would think that you do not know the gender of this person. This is easily rectified today, to the best of my knowledge. So here we're referring to someone who has not had such a procedure. Or androgynous. Androgynous is someone who unfortunately was born with genitalia of more than one sex. Harei hen safek. So such a person's status, whether this person is a man or a woman, is unclear. נותנים עליהן חומרי האיש וחומרי האישה בכל מקום. And the general rule, not just with reference to these halachot, but in all cases, such people are considered both man and woman for all purposes לחומרה. וחייבים בכל, ואם עברו אינם לוקים. On the other hand, because it's a safek, אין לקויות מספק. A person is not lashed misafek, and therefore, even if the person transgressed this or that matter, there would be no malkuyot as a result. Halacha well or hey. So therefore, what we understand from this is that a woman may shave all of her head, or that particular area of the head, the pa'ath harosh, which is the lower part of the temple in front of the ear. Nevertheless, she is not allowed to do this action of shaving that area for a man. And also for a minor. Now, the most obvious question one could ask here is, what is the definition in terms of quantity or area that may not be shaved? In other words, is it that entire part of the head, or is the essential thing that not all hair was removed from that particular area? And again, if you understand that this halacha has to do with being different and separate from the goyim, and by the way, I just recalled now that it was common also amongst the ancient Egyptians, such a hairstyle, and therefore, and according to Rambam, certainly the ikar here is to be distinct and different from the goyim, as we discussed at the beginning of Perek Yud Aleph, as you will recall, ein holachim b'chokot hagoyim, v'lo midamim lahem, v'lo b'malbush, v'lo b'se'ar l'chayatze b'hem. So lo b'se'ar, Rambam is here discussing Perek Yud Bet, but the overall rubric, heading of all these things is lo lidamot lagoyim. Which of course is exactly, this was how the reform movement began, by deliberately acting in contravention of this essential concept of being different and separate from the goyim. The aim of Reform Judaism in Germany and elsewhere was explicitly to be as similar to the goyim as possible. So we see that this is a very, and everything flows from that. Once that is your aim and your purpose, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to remain loyal to the Torah and live according to the Torah. It's simply not viable, and that's exactly how it's supposed to be. The Torah does not want it to be viable. The Torah wishes you to know that you are different, and you are commanded to be different, and you must be different. So now Rambam says, this area, what does it have? Shi'ur, lo nathanu ba hachamim shi'ur. Chachamim did not explicitly refer or specify how many hairs must remain or what area has to remain unshaven. Therefore, Rambam says that what Rambam can tell us is what he heard from his teachers and Chachamim in his part of the world. V'shamanu mizakenenu, and we heard, our tradition is that we received from our teachers and fathers, she'en maniach pahuth mi'arba'im se'aroth, that 40 hairs must be left at least on that area. In other words, it has to be something noticeable, something plainly visible to the eye. And this, I think, this halakha has relevance also to what we will learn later about the beard. I will explain later. So why 40 sa'aroth? Because that is something that will be clear and obvious. It doesn't make sense. In other words, what these Chachamim were saying was, it cannot be that you leave 1 or 2 or 3 hairs on that part of the head, otherwise shaved clean, and that you should be able to claim that I haven't shaved pa'atei harosh. That is not reasonable. That cannot be what the Torah had in mind. 40 se'aroth is something that will be clear and readily visible. Umutar lilkoth hapeot b'misparayim. It is also, but on the other hand, all this refers to shaving, to removing altogether, as we said before, such as with the razor. However, it is mutar to trim pe'oth harosh, lilkoth hapeot b'misparayim, which leaves some of the hair, doesn't remove it altogether, as we know. Lo ne'esar era hashhatha shel ta'ar. The only thing that is asur is complete removal, complete shaving, which removes all visible hair. You can also not feel it with your finger. If you run your finger over the area, you will not feel it, unless perhaps the razor is particularly blunt. Then that is the isur. Whereas trimming, even very short, with scissors is entirely mutar. And this, again, we will see is relevant to discussions regarding the beard. So Rambam now says in Halakha Zayin.
Rabbi.
Yes.
So this discussion about scissors, the point is to say that there's some hair left, not any sort of scissor-like motion or scissor-like apparatus is mutar.
Precisely. That is precisely the point. And I imagine you are referring to the claim that certain kinds of electric shavers, because of the mechanism and the manner in which they work, are mutar because it resembles the action of a scissor, of a pair of scissors, rather than a razor. That is spurious. That is not true. The point exactly is the outcome. Do you see? Is there something left? Yes or no? And I'll mention this again in a moment with regards to the beard. Rambam therefore continues. Derech kumare Avoda Zarah haya lashhil zakanam. It was also the common practice amongst their priests and holy men to shave their beards. Again, we know this was something that was done in ancient Egypt. We know this was done in many other cultures. Interestingly, in the Christian world, it depends. I haven't researched this fact, but the reality is, or the origins of this reality are not very clear to me. But the fact is, in the Catholic world, for example, you will not see beards at all. The Pope, the priests, the bishops, what have you, they're all they're clean shaven. Whereas in the Orthodox churches, Russian, Greek, etc., also Coptic and Ethiopian, they most definitely do grow beards. So this statement of the Rambam here, at least, is reflected in the Catholic world, or maybe Protestant worlds as well. Although I suppose in the Protestant world today, you do as you please, as with most things. But belief in God is also not absolutely necessary. If you're an Anglican priest, for example, it's optional. So Rambam says, "Derech kumrei avoda zarah haya lashchit zakanam, lefichach asarat Torah lashchit hazakan." So Rambam is very clear as to the reason for these halachot. Some Rishonim explicitly will agree with the Rambam, and others will explicitly disagree. Some say that we don't know why, and it doesn't make a difference. The fact is that this is the mitzvah, and we do so because we were commanded to do so. We don't know why. We don't have to know why. Uhamesh pe'oth yeshbo. Now, with regards to the beard, there are 5 pe'oth, or 5 areas. Lehi ha'ilyon, ulehi ha'tahton miyamin. So you have, again, 2 sides of the face. So you have the upper and lower cheek, literally, on the right and on the left. With shiboret hazakan. Shiboret hazakan, according to Rambam's understanding, when that of many Rishonim, but not all, is that it refers to the beard that grows from the area of the chin. That's called shiboret hazakan. V'lokeh al kol pe'ah u'fe'ah. And one is hayav malkuyot for each one of these areas. Ve'im natalan kulan kehat lokeh hamesh. As we said before, if you shaved all of your beard at the same time, in one sitting, so to speak, you hayav for hamesh pe'oth and hamesh malkuyot, therefore. And here too, Rambam continues, وَإِنَّهُ حَيَّاv عَدْ شِيغَلَهَنُّ بَثَعَرٍ. You only hayav if you shaved the beard, removed the hairs, the bristles completely, as a razor does. Shneimar v'lo tashchith et pa'ath zakonecha. Lashchith, you see the Torah uses the term lashchith, which means to completely remove or to destroy. Giluach sheyesh bo hashchata. We're talking about a complete removal of the hairs of the beard and the bristles. Lefichach im gilah zakano b'misparayim patur. And here too, therefore, from the Lashon of the Rambam, it seems, lefichach im gilah zakano b'misparayim patur. Lichora, the word patur implies that it is asur, but not mutar, but patur min Torah. Because from the Talmud it seems that misparayim ka'en ta'ar is asur. In other words, if you are able to trim your beard very, very close to the skin, so that it is essentially as if you shaved with a razor, that is asur midivrei soferim. Although there are those who understood from the Lashon of the Rambam, despite the fact that he uses the term patur, that it is mutar lechatchila to do so.
Are there any other places in the Rambam besides Hilchot Shabbat and potentially this where patur is used to mean asur?
I do not remember offhand, but I believe there are some other places where it can be discussed what the Rambam meant precisely. In Hilchot Shabbat, as we know at the beginning, Rambam writes that wherever I write patur, it means patur aval asur. But there are a few places where there seems to be a somewhat less stringent use of the term. And again, here also the mitgaleh, he who is being shaved, whose beard is being shaved, is guilty of transgressing the mitzvah of the Torah if he assisted in some way, again by tilting his head or what have you. A woman who has some growth of a beard on her face may remove it completely. And again, if, as we saw before, if she shaves the beard of a man, she is petura. Now, with regards to the misparim, again, what we find in the Talmud, which is discussed by other Rishonim more extensively, in greater detail, is that misparim ka'in ta'ar is asur. In other words, trimming the beard very, very close, even if it is done by way of scissors, is asur, because it is similar to the result that one achieves with a razor. Now, practically speaking, it cannot be completely equivalent to the outcome of that one achieves using a real razor, for obvious reasons, but it can be very close, and that is asur. At least so essentially all the Posukim agree, even though in this particular point here in Rambam is perhaps not sufficiently clear. I know that now on the general question of shaving one's beard with an electric shaver, there are, as you probably know, there are different opinions. I am of the opinion that it is definitely asur. I can tell you for a fact that I once saw a written source where one source that I saw referred to a discussion between a certain Avrech and Hagaon Rabbi Yashiv Zitzal, and his response was that if it removes the beard such that it looks as if you shaved with a razor, then it is asur. Something similar I also heard many, many years ago, also based on a conversation that someone had with Hagaon Harav Ovadia Yosef, where he said something similar. His response was, if you run your finger over your face and you do not feel the bristles plainly, then it's asur. And if you do, then it's mutar. I think his reasoning was that if you do feel something, then it's basically like that you will also feel something. Something will be left. It's also known that the Hazon Ish was of the opinion that electric shavers are asur. I once saw many, many years ago, I was probably 18 at the time, in Bnei Brak, I saw what's called in Yiddish a pashkavil, in other words, a placard pasted onto the wall somewhere, saying, quoting a letter written by Rav Shach to someone who asked him about shaving. And Rav Shach's response was, כידוע, אין לי יד ושם בענייני פסיקת הלכה. I do not normally have express any opinion about psak halacha, which is in itself an interesting concept, but that's the fact. That's what it said. But it's known, אבל ידוע שהחזון איש עשה. But it's known that the Hazon Ish said it's asur. That was Rav Shach's response. And there are many, many other sources and poskim and books that have discussed this. That is, and I believe should be the conclusion. Now, we also have to define the concept lechi alyon and lechi tahton. In the book before me, there is an illustration, but I'm not convinced that the illustration here is entirely correct, because we're talking about 5 areas, and these areas are referred to as a pe'ah. A pe'ah means an end. In other words, the extremity of something, right? Like pe'at hasadeh, the end of the field is to be left unharvested for the aniyim, etc. Now, according to the illustration before me, which perhaps I don't know if everyone can see this, but I think probably people can see it now. According to this illustration, I have a certain doubt as to whether this is true, because I would have thought, if we're talking about 5 pe'oth, as we said, I would have thought that it refers to the upper part of the lehi, which is, in other words, the part of the cheek or the side of the face near the ear, but below the pe'ath harosh, and then the lower part, lehi atachton. Again, we're talking about the pe'ah. Lichora, we're talking about the end. I would have thought the end refers to the place where the cheek and where the jaw joins the other bones of the head of the face. So then you have 2 on each side, the upper and lower lehi. So the upper lehi is just below pe'ath harosh. The lower lehi would be where the jaw bones meet, that area. Again, you cannot define these areas with absolute precision in terms of millimeters or something like that, but that area. And then you have Shiborat HaZakan, and you also have the Safam, the mustache, which we will discuss. So there definitely are Posakim, the Rishonim, who, from their descriptions, although there are a number of Shitoth, by the way, it should be stated, Chazal use this terminology, Lehi Alyon, Lehi Tachton, and in fact, some don't use exactly, Chazal don't use exactly that Lashon. They speak about the Hamesh Pe'ot, and there are a number of Perushim. You can find them in the Torah, for example. According to Rambam, who is Lichora definitive about where these places are, I would have thought that talking about Hamesh Pe'ot and talking about Lehi Elyon and Lehi Tachton would be 2 separate places, whereas in the middle, like the middle of the cheek, would be Mutar. If that's not the case, then why distinguish between Lehi Elyon and Lehi Tachton? Why don't simply say Halechi and just say Halehayim? The 2 cheeks, the entire side of the face on this side and on that side are Asur. Why the distinction between Lehi Elyon and Lehi Tachton? Lichora, that indicates that the Isur refers to the ends or the corners or the borders of the beard, and not the central part of the beard, as it were, on the side of the face. And the Shiborat HaZakan, which is perhaps even the more dominant and more obvious part of the beard. That's what I would have thought. Now, in the next halacha, Rambam says, Hasafam, mutar l'ghalaho b'ta'ar. It is mutar to shave completely the mustache. In other words, from this we understand that Pa'at Zakanecha does not include literally every part of the beard, or every place on the face that is from where hair grows. That is not the case. So the Safam is not included, and this is agreed to by all. That is the hair above the upper lip. Similarly, says Rambam, and the same applies to that part of the beard which grows just below the lower lip. This, by the way, is already not agreed to by all. Even though it is mutar, lefi adin Lo nahur Yisrael lashchito, ela legaleach kesato. It is not the practice of Am Yisrael to completely shave these parts off, the moustache we're referring to, but rather to trim it, legaleach kesato, ad shelo ya'akev achila u'shtiya, so that it does not interfere with the normal activities such as eating and drinking. From which you might understand, and from which you should understand, that the idea that it is asur to touch or to trim in any way any part of the beard, such as certain people will claim, is not true. It's also not reasonable or rational that one should not be able to eat or drink without getting one's moustache in one's chicken soup, or covered in jam, or whatever it might be. That's not very reasonable or rational, but some people somehow believe that it is, for various reasons. As you see clearly from the Rambam, this is not true, and it may be trimmed as required.
Rabbi,
Yes.
how about other types of hair removal that cannot be classified, or that might not be classified as hashhatha, like through chemical agents or tweezers or something of that sort?
Lichora, various chemical agents are not asur, although some poskim have discussed it and said that they are asur because what counts is the outcome, and the outcome is like a ta'ar, it removes the hair altogether. But some have said that it's no dafka b'ta'ar. This is something that one can find various opinions about. With regards to tweezers, etc., here too it is also something which has been discussed. I do know that there were, in Roman times, some of the Romans used to remove all of their beard, whisker by whisker, with tweezers, which is an interesting point to think about. But most poskim are of the opinion that it is mutar to do so. All right, now we have one more halacha that we'll look at today, and that is halacha yod or taith. Ha'avarat hase'ar mish'ar haguf. Hair removal from other parts of the body. Kechon, bet hashechi, the underarm, or bet ha'irwa, or the genital area. Eno asur min ha'torah, ela min divrei soferim. It is not asur min ha'torah. The Torah does not refer to any such thing, and therefore it would be mutar min ha'torah. But it is asur min divrei soferim. V'hama'aviro makin otho makat marduth. And he who does so is hayav makat marduth. In other words, he's hayav mi divrei soferim, malkuyot mi divrei soferim. B'meh devarim amurim, when is this the case? B'makom she'en ma'avirim otho ela noshim. In other words, the ikar of the isur here is that a man should not behave, not dress like, or groom oneself, or behave in the manner that women do, and vice versa. It seems that President Trump learned this halakha recently as well, because he stressed in his inauguration speech that official U.S. government policy henceforth will be that there are only two genders. So that is clearly the view of the Torah as well. There are only two genders. We did discuss earlier that's true androgynos, which is a safek, and also a tumtum, but these are exceptional, unfortunate exceptional circumstances. But yes, the Torah definitely believes in the basic and fundamental and obvious fact that there are only two genders, male and female, and males are not to conduct themselves or dress or behave or groom themselves as women, and vice versa. Because these are always indications of some either nefarious intention or some aberration, which can only lead to unacceptable and even disastrous outcomes and consequences. So Rambam writes, in other words, a man may not remove hair from those areas that women generally tend to do. Because a man must not try and act or behave in an effeminate, or groom himself in an effeminate manner. But where it is normal and accepted that men also do so, if he did so, he is not hayav malkiyot. It is mutar to remove with scissors hair from any other part of the body, but with scissors, Rambam says, mashma, not with. Well, that's the question. Is it because Rambam is suggesting that to do so with the ta'ar, with the razor, is asur, or because that's simply not the normal way of things? It's such other types of hair, such as the head, or I don't know, if a person wants to trim the hair on his chest or something, shall we say. Some people will perhaps shave that part of the body, and others will use scissors perhaps, or what have you. It's not entirely clear whether Rambam intends to say that it is asur unless it's only with scissors, or that's simply the derech ha'inyan, that is the way that these things are normally done. It's certainly not asur min Torah, at least. That much is clear. All right, we shall stop here for today. Hey Baruchim, Hizku v'yames levavchem, kol ha'meyahalim l'Adonai, shalom v'nisachon al kol oyevenu, mibayith u'michutz, peace and victory over all our enemies, foreign and domestic. Shalom, shalom.